Things are not getting worse. They are in fact getting exposed. But before you can fix any problem, you must first acknowledge the problem exists. You must clearly identify the problem and flush it out as to who is responsible for creating it. This is the process currently unfolding in Canada and so many other free nations around the world. I use that term loosely. It has become very apparent that we have a problem, and it is a very large and very serious problem. We, the citizens of the supposed free world, are no longer governed by representation from those we have elected, but rather, it seems, we are ruled by a small number of career politicians, technocrats, and global elitists who have infiltrated our governments and institutions on every level. They serve their own agenda. They create their own narrative, control the media, and they no longer act in the best interest of the population. 2 weeks to stop the spread has become 2 years, and it has spread a new virus. Communism, fascism, socialism, whatever ism you choose to use, it is the complete destruction of free society. The unjustified oppression of civil liberties and attacks on individual freedom to choose, even choices regarding one's own body, the ultimate protection of which cannot be denied in any free society. In Canada, the Emergency Act, formerly the War Measures Act, was invoked and passed through the House of Commons in response to a peaceful protest. This action was taken as the first choice of the ruler Justin Trudeau instead of the last choice. This should concern countries all around the world, as this belief of it cannot happen here, well, it happened here. Despite the freedom protest having been removed from Parliament's doorstep, a city in which there is ground deemed to be sacred to democracy, it should be that of Canada's capital, Ottawa. After all, aren't those who work on Parliament Hill accountable to the people they serve? Apparently not. Dare to disagree with the rulers, and they unleash hundreds of armed police, mounted police officers who trample Aboriginal elders and pepper spray journalists for daring to disagree with their narrative. Among the onslaught of labels and name-calling, white supremacist, misogynist, fringe minority with unacceptable views, every Canadian was treated like a domestic terrorist and threatened by police to be investigated and punished for the months to come. Ottawa was in fact a very peaceful protest until Justin Trudeau invoked his own reign of terror under the Emergency Act for a protest that threatened nothing more than his own ego and further exposure of his own incompetence. Trudeau has proven himself many times over that he is not leadership material, but rather an ill-informed and all-emotional actor on a stage. It seems he is incapable of telling the truth, riddled with ethics violations, having openly supported protests that use violence and fear and intimidation, such as BLM and Antifa, as well as corporate scandals such as the We Charity and SNC-Lavalin. This reads like a rap sheet of somebody who should be behind bars, not the resume of a prime minister who leads a first world country. But this is indeed just how upside down our world has become. Words have been hijacked to mean their opposite. Debate cancelled in favor of name-calling and discreditation of the opposition. Corrupt politicians speak out of both sides of their mouth with no accountability, and the criminal is now the victim. How dare any reasonable citizen, the now ruled peasant class, challenge his or her rulers, or else the entire government apparatus in all its fury be unleashed upon you. The fact is, we do have a major problem. Our free society values of family, respect, tolerance, justice, equality under one rule of law. God's law, by the way, not government's law. Quote, whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. End quote. These principles are being wiped out in the pursuit of a global agenda headed up by unelected foreign influencers. Introduce the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, but I will leave that discussion for another day. In understanding the nature of the problem, we find at the center of it career politicians playing party politics. And as any rational human being knows, the same brain that created a problem is not likely motivated or capable of solving it. In Canada, it is time for every MP to resign. The Liberal Party, the NDP, the Green Party, for very obvious reasons, but also the Conservative Party of Canada MPs. Why might you ask I say such things? In times of crisis, silence and inaction are not solutions, but contributors to the problem. For 2 years, every MP has had the opportunity to do their job. And that, first and foremost, was to protect the individual rights and freedoms of every Canadian citizen, all whom are to be treated equal under one just rule of law. No MP has proved capable of this simple task, and thus let us not wait until the next crisis, and there will be a next crisis, before we clean house and start anew. It is time for a vote of non-confidence. It is time for real, everyday Canadians to step up and be part of the solution. We must be silent no more. Ludwig von Mises said it well. Everyone carries a part of society on his shoulders. No one is relieved of his share of the responsibility by others. And no one can find a safe way out for himself if society is sweeping toward destruction. Therefore, everyone in his own interest must thrust himself vigorously into the intellectual battle. None can stand aside with unconcern. The interest of everyone hangs on the result. Whether he chooses or not, every man is drawn into the great historical struggle, the decisive battle into which our epoch has plunged. There is a need to eliminate corrupt party politics. We need to impose term limits on those who wish to serve their country, not rule it. And it is time to re-educate the populace as to what it actually means to be an active citizen in your own country. It is time for every citizen to engage in active citizenry, and when and where necessary, peaceful civil disobedience. Our job is to restrain the forever growing and power-hungry institution we call government, with more frequent actions through protest and civil disobedience for their overreaches. We must become once again active participants in our own governance. As we can see, even small infringements have become permanent policy. It is more than past time for everyday Canadians, every citizen around the world who values freedom and individual autonomy, to take an interest in how they are governed. If we have learned anything, it is that we cannot entrust our person, our well-being, our families, and our livelihoods to another, especially government, an entity that has become so very disconnected to the reality of everyday individuals to whom they were once elected to govern. Politicians have become arrogant elitists who have separated themselves from the very policies they enforce on those they govern. This is autocracy, not democracy. My fellow Canadians, we can lead the way. We must regain control of the runaway train and get back to basics. Government of the people, for the people. We must look to rebuild a small government that is restricted in size and power to ensure that 2019 to 2022 never again happens. To ensure the oversized, bloated, overspending, limitless power-hungry entity that we have today leaves us for good. Things may indeed appear very somber and threatening as the world faces down the tyrants who appear in the media to have an upper hand. But, as we have said, before any problem can be fixed, it must first be exposed. And if COVID-19 has done anything, it has done that.